All right, what is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here, joined back with my good friend and business partner, Jim Brown. What's up, Jim?
Not much, man. How you doing, bro?
Doing good, dude. Doing good, man. I'm excited for this one, man. I'm excited to be jamming. Those of that haven't been following this podcast for some time, and if this is your first time checking this out, these episodes that I do when I'm able to connect with Jim, and we try to, have a couple of these a month that we're able to do, is more, health and fitness related, not so much business related, like a lot of the other stuff on the podcast, but more, health and fitness related. And today, man, I'm excited for this topic. This is something that, is something I'm very interested in, something I'm always trying to achieve more of, something I know that you've been, involved in for your entire life for the most part. But something that I think is important to a lot of dudes that are out there watching and listening to this, which, I guess today's theme is about, getting jacked, man. Like, what's it take to get out there? Yeah. Get arms like Jim's that are bigger than my quads, So yeah, we're going to break down, talk about getting jacked, and with this, just to kind of set the stage here, talking about it from a standpoint of, not going out there and doing a bunch of anabolic steroids. And I mean, there's that element of jacked, but then I think, a lot like dudes like myself, that are like, okay, hey, man, I want to do this in a healthy way. But I want to go out there and have more muscle and get bigger, get stronger, have more muscle, whether that be, like myself, somebody that is taking TRT or trying to do this naturally, but what are the, optimal ways of going out there to maximize hypertrophy, muscle gain, muscle growth. And this is going to be, multiple different, I guess, facets to this podcast, because we're gonna have to talk about training. We're going to have to talk about nutrition. We're going to have to probably talk about maybe sleep, supplementation, and so forth. But before we jump into that, I did want to plug something. A lot of you guys know that Jim and I have a supplement company, Forge Life, FORJLIFE.com, forgelife.com. We got 2 supplements on there. One is called Zone, which is a nootropic. So if you guys are looking for good, sustainable mental energy, that also is really good for, just overall brain health. You get a lot of these stimulants out there, that just kind of, it might get you wired for a few minutes or for a few hours, make you jittery, but they don't, they're not focused on longevity of memory and healthy brain overall. And also a lot of those, you crash hard on this. So, our nootropic Zone, really powerful nootropic, you guys. I mean, before Jim came up with this formulation, I can't take credit for it. I just run logistics on the back end. Jim's the brains that formulates it all. I was taking everything, like modafinil and anything I could get my hands on just to get that. I'm an entrepreneur. I own multiple businesses. I work all the time. I got to have great focus. I got to have that mental energy to push through running multiple businesses and with young kids and, just to get through life. And this was the first formulation that I ever took where, that replaced all of those things, and gave me that mental energy that I was looking for. And again, a lot of things in there for long-term memory and just overall brain health. The other one that we have that I wanted to really talk about today is called Care. So this is for overall eye health. Now, I've got really bad dry eyes. I've got bad eyes. My oil gland ducts are, like I'm on the last stage from it being like 100% irreversible. And then there's, you have, the potential going blind if it gets to a certain severity. And, plus I'm looking at screens all day, like all of us. So, my eyes are already pretty messed up, so for me, I mean, this supplement's been huge. But then I started getting feedback, actually, from my stepdad, from my dad and my stepmom that recently started taking it, started getting them take it. But instantaneously, man, they're like, dude, like, we need more of that stuff. Like, they just started instantaneously seeing less eye strain throughout the day, feeling improved overall vision, and so forth. So first, make sure you guys go check out forgelife.com. Jim, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to those 2 supplements.
Well, obviously, I like those 2 formulas because I created them. But, to just back up a little bit, I mean, I created those with the ingredients based on, essentially being in the nutrition business for 25 years. I was a part owner of a health food store. I formulated for a couple brands. I used to train reps for major brands. And I've always been in that space and interested in trying to, take things that I felt were important and benefited. But yeah, the I formula specifically, man, I'm super proud of. I take it and I notice a difference when I don't. And so whether it's eye strain or my ability to kind of hang on to my vision as I get older, and I swear by it. I feel with a week without it, my eyes start to deteriorate. And when I doubled up on it recently, they improved. So I'm a fan. Not only did I create it, but I believe in both of those products.
Yeah. And I got to imagine, I don't know this for a fact because I'm not, a doctor or a specialist in anything. But like most days, dude, I'm either here looking at a screen or I'm here looking at a screen. I might have a few hours, like, hanging out with the family or whatever I'm not, but it's like at least 10 hours of my day are looking at screens. And I'm like, man, and I think that's probably true for a lot of people. And a lot of people don't even probably have awareness of how much screen time they get a day, whether it be work or, just entertainment or whatever, but it's got to be doing some damage.
Yeah, I noticed. I mean, the eye strain, especially after the long day of, if I'm on the computer all day between the computer and my cell phone, the big thing that I notice without it is that I won't make it 10 hours. Then my eyes start to lose focus. It's very hard to concentrate with them. They feel tired. I literally have to stop reading. Even if I take a break and come back, it's hard to focus on the print on the computer. With it, I can go much longer. And like today, since I started doubling up 2 weeks ago, I don't have a time limit anymore. I'm done. The day's way done before my eyes feel that strain. So again, I'm very proud of the formula and it works. All we've had is positive feedback from it. So.
Yep. All right. So, again, guys, forgelife.com. Forge is FORJLIFE.com if you want to check that out. All right. So let's jump on into getting jacked, dude. So, if we were to break this down, obviously we got the different kind of quadrants of, you got training, you got nutrition, and then, maybe sleep, supplementation. Where do you want to start?
Well, I'll defer to the advanced sports training program that we also sell. But I break that down into stimulus and recovery. And to start with the stimulus part, we have to have a justification for your body to change. So for you to put on muscle, it's not a normal function that your body's going to do, right? Overall, your body is very tight with biological resources, and it doesn't make sense to build muscle unless it has to. So I'm going to just paint with really broad strokes here for all you biochemists and bro scientists out there. Bear with me, but you have to stimulate and kind of justify to your body why you're going to spend these biological resources to build larger muscles. And, that's the stimulus part. So when you go into the gym and you lift weights, there's some technique to it. There's some learning how to do it. There's kind of a teaching yourself and your muscle memory or your nervous system, everything, how to do a movement. That takes a while. It could take up to a couple years, and you'll probably get stronger doing that. But when you get to the point where you start to figure out your body, you can do these movements efficiently. Your body kind of adapts to that very, very rapidly. And when that happens, you're not going to build any muscle. You might initially have had some results just walking in a gym and deloading a plate or moving, plates around on a machine. But there's going to come a point where you're going to have to start to really earn those gains. For some people, that happens very early. For some others, it doesn't happen for a few months. You might get a few months of bliss of just, doing push-ups, and your body's going to grow muscle at that point. So somewhere between walking in the gym for the first time and, the first year and a half, depending on how hard you train, your body's going to catch on and go, okay, man, we're done with it. So that's when the stimulus part gets real important. If you think about, Dorian Yates kind of used this analogy, and I really like it, but so I'm going to steal it. But if you think about calluses on your hand, if you go, out to your shop or whatever, and you grab a piece of sandpaper, and you have like 180 grit, and you rub your hand on it 10 times, and it kind of makes it a little raw. Well, you're going to build a callus. Your body's going to respond to that and build a callus. Well, if you keep doing that every day or every 2 days or whatever, your body's going to build up an amount of callus on there, and it's not going to build any more. But if you keep stepping it up, okay, I'm going to add more pressure. I'm going to go up to a higher grit. I'm going to do it for more times. Your body's going to respond by building thicker calluses. And if you move that over to muscles, that's kind of what it is. So when you go in, you're going to have to stimulate muscle synthesis. You're going to have to stimulate kind of just an easy way to think about it. You're going to have to justify your body why you have to recover and build bigger muscles. And to do that, you have to train pretty intensely. And that's why I always, in our training system, we go to positive failure. And that kind of keeps you honest about going in there and doing something that's going to justify your body to spending the biological resources to put on muscle. So that in a nutshell is the stimulus portion. And once you figure out what exercise to do, once you say, hey, I'm going to work my back, and figure out which areas of your back you want to work and what exercises those are. If you want to work your chest and you want to separate your upper chest from your lower chest, and you figure out how to do that. Once you get to that point where you know how to kind of target your intended muscle groups, and you're going to start justifying, you have to re-justify every single workout why you're adding muscle, why your body has to adapt. That comes into progressive overload. And that's where, we're going to failure, and you're gradually lifting heavier and heavier weights for more and more reps. And that's the only way that I know how to do it. Unless you're a gifted freak and you just go in and start, from the first time that you lift a barbell, magic things happen, but those people are pretty rare.
Yeah. So then, because you got intensity, which you were just speaking to, but then from there you've got volume, right? And when I say volume, just in case I'm misunderstanding a concept or misspeaking here, but I'm speaking to the overall sets that you're doing per body part inside, because it might be common for people to think, based on what you just said, okay, well, a way for me to stimulate this is if I capped out at growth, and I used to get response with doing 12 sets for chest, now I'm not getting any growth. Well, let me double that, right? But then there is an element of too much volume too, so can you kind of maybe speak to?
Yeah, that kind of comes back into the first, when I alluded to, you have to balance stimulus with recovery. And so you could just add it, it could be as simple as adding volume and your body responds to it and you grow, but more likely than not, you're also going to have to balance that with a recovery. And so that's where the nuance comes in of balancing those two, because if you overstimulate, one, your body's going to spend too much time repairing. You're going to be sore for 4 days, 5 days. You're not going to be able to train that muscle again for 7 to 10 days. That's the kind of workouts we did in high school. We go in and just fucking obliviate yourself, and you're sore for 7 to 10 days. That's too much. We kind of balance that. I like to hit muscle groups every 2 to 3 days, definitely not longer than once a week. And to do that, you have to be kind of balanced on what you do. And so I typically don't just throw volume at that. I will add either another weight, maybe another set where I'm going to positive failure. It really depends on the individual, but at some point, then you're going to hit the point where you're not recovering effectively, and you can up your recovery, which we'll talk about later, or you can figure out how to reduce the volume and reduce that stimulation so that it's balanced with your recovery. So you hit the muscle, you've done enough to justify your body to adapt, you recover, and then repeat it again.
Okay, so then I've heard different things from different people, all right, in order to experience hypertrophy, muscle growth, you need at least 12 sets of working sets per body part on a weekly basis, and then I've heard, all the way up to, either between like 12 and 20, and whether that be all in one single session, like if you're hitting one body part a day, or if you're breaking them up to, twice a week, is there, any truth or science to that as far as working sets?
Well, I mean, overall, there's some data out there, man, but I'll just give you a couple examples. There was a guy, bodybuilder, pretty famous, Mike Menzer, and he had a training system where you essentially did one working set and you went to positive and negative failure, and that was it. And I tried that out. I did those workouts, And that's where you're going to, like you're doing curls, and then you can't curl it anymore. You can't shorten your muscles. So you have somebody help you do that. Then you keep going to the point where you can't hold the elongation or the negative portion of that movement as well. And you go beyond that. And one of those working sets would destroy that body part. So in that scenario, one working set, I wasn't able to work that muscle again in 7 to 10 days. So it was way too much for me. That's why I then started kind of going towards, okay, I'm only going to train to positive failure. That's how I kind of came up with that. And so it depends, man. You can do that, or you could be a volume guy. Arnold used to preach, I'm going to do 20 sets of rows and 30 sets each and do it that way. So there's a couple different ways to do it, but any way that you do it, those guys are balancing their stimulation with their recovery so that they can do it and be effective at that cycle of stimulation, recovery. And so no matter what your formula is going to be, how you figure out to do that, it could be 12 sets, it could be one set. I have my own thoughts. I train with a little less volume so I can train more frequently. That's kind of my formula, but it doesn't matter. You're still going to have to come back to that general rule where you're going to have to balance your stimulation with recovery.
The hard part that I have is, all these quote unquote experts that are, PhDs that, are supposed to be the experts that, deliver this science. And look, they could be, fully accurate. But when I look at them, I'm like, okay, none of them are jacked. But then I look at you, I'm like, all right, well, okay, like you're somebody that's, so obviously,
well, I'll take, there's all those guys doing their studies and everything. I don't, it just doesn't, it's not relevant. You don't take that and then take it down to the gym and then train people and turn monsters, create monsters. You just don't, it doesn't happen. We did, there used to be back in, it must have been in the early 2000s when they were doing MRI or some kind of studies where it would show you would do an exercise and it would show the muscle fiber activation, how many fibers you were recruiting per exercise. And this is the best exercise to build hamstrings. Yeah, well, nobody built their fucking big ass hamstrings doing single leg, leg curls, buddy. It hasn't happened. It just doesn't happen. And because it's hard, those movements, typically those are the movements that are hard to build this progressive overload and lift heavier and heavier weights with. And so, we were all excited when those came out. Oh man, this is the secret. It's not. All that stuff is bullshit. If you watch a guy, or if you've been around as long as I have, seen all these people come and go in the gym, myself included, tried everything else, everything under the sun that you could, to come up with what the best way to build muscle was, the best way to coach clients. And you kind of group all these guys together that really put on significant amounts of muscle. And it's that simple thing. They figure out the formula between stimulus and recovery. And the stimulus side of that is progressively lifting bigger and bigger weights in the movement that are good for you, meaning that you can target the intended muscle group with them. And it's a movement that you can add weight to progressively over time, meaning, concentration curls might be great. You can really feel your bicep and it's great. I get a little pump out of it and I can really feel it. You're not going to build big ass fucking arms by doing concentration curls. You're going to do them by doing a compound movement, either on a machine or with a free weight that recruits a bunch of muscle and you can progressively overload. Meaning the day you started doing it, you're curling the 45-pound bar. And then in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, you're curling 225 with that bar. That's how you build big muscles.
Yeah, well, I can't even fathom doing a bicep curl 225, but
well, I mean that was always the gold, kind of the gold standard for me, and that's I reached that. I could load up a 45-pound bar with 2 plates and do sets of skull crushers, and then I would stand up and do sets of straight curls with them, and that's how you build big muscle. I mean, that took, at that point in my career, probably 12 years of progressively overloading those big movements that were recruiting a lot of muscle fibers and fit my body. And, you put in the time, man, you put in the time and you build, that's how you do it, man.
So then when it comes to rep range, because it's, I've heard things of like, okay, if you're not doing enough, let's just say, single movements like power lifters, it's maybe difficult to fire that same stimulus, and I've heard certain things of, you got to be, at least 5 reps up to, however many. I mean, obviously still to failure, but is there, if you're going to positive failure, like, I mean, is rep range, how important is rep range?
Yeah, I extensively tested 5 rep ranges, sets of 5 reps, and got a little bit stronger, but my body really didn't respond by putting on muscle. And to put that in context too, there was a group of junior Olympic lifters that lifted at the same time I did, back in Arizona, and these are guys that weighed 185 pounds, 180 max, competed at 180. This one kid, Chris, was 6'2", 6'3", and he would come in every day or every other day and front squat 5 plates. He would do a couple warm-ups, load it up, and do 2 reps with it. He did that every other day. He would do that. And then on the off days, he would power clean. The guy's legs might have been 13, 14 inches. So, that kind of that with my experimenting in 5 rep ranges, it kind of got me thinking, okay, what am I really doing here? And then that moved me to, German volume training, 10 to 10, and things happen rapidly. So for me, the lower volume reps don't really do a lot on their own. In my training system, in the way that I've always trained, I like to go that first working set where I'm failing between 18 and 20 reps. And then I keep the weight the same, and I'll do subsequent reps or subsequent working sets after that. And depending on the movement, like if I'm doing a chest movement, my first set might be 20, 25 reps. The second set is probably going to be 15 to 17. Third set, depending on how much I rest, is going to be, 7 to 8. And so if you do it that way, the way that I have it built up, we hit a variety of rep ranges. But I think anybody who knows anything is going to kind of pretty much agree that somewhere around 12 reps and beyond is what most people are going to respond with hypertrophy to.
Yeah. Okay. So slightly higher rep range, but positive failure on each one of those working sets.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then when it comes to rest in between sets, and I've heard that, hey, this can vary, if I'm doing, I don't know, bent over barbell rows versus, biceps, it can, I don't know if that's true or not, but, is there any magic kind of gap range in between resting sets?
Well, it really depends on kind of what your goal is at the moment, right? If I'm
Goal's getting jacked.
Yeah, if I'm training normally, I'm not trying to, really struggle through a low percent of body fat and try to get to, stores that are very difficult. And so where I would be using a quicker tempo and kind of keeping my heart rate up, I'm resting long enough to where my next lift is going to be viable. Meaning if I do a set of 20 and I failed, if I wait 30 seconds to do another set, I'm not going to be recovered by then. I'm just not, especially in my old manhood now, it's not going to work. So for me, somewhere around the 2-3 minutes is a minimum. On the bigger list, the longer that I rest, the better response that I'm going to have. And there's, kind of a back end to that too. So if I'm doing a leg press and I'm cranking out 20s, sets of 20s on my way up to my working set or whatever, I have to recover for 3 or 4 minutes in between those. I just have to, and so I kind of leave it up to the trainee and say, whatever it is, whatever you're doing, and you're writing down, how many reps you're getting, where you're failing at, just make it consistent. If you feel best, resting 2-3 minutes, then make it 2-3 minutes. Be consistent with it. If you're a power lifter, you're going to rest for 15 minutes, it seems like. But there's a point where you're going to have a diminishing return. So if I'm doing chest presses, I failed at 20, I'm going to stay with the same weight, and I want to get as many reps as possible again. If I want to try to hit 20, I'm going to have to rest 5-6 minutes to even get close to that. But I'm probably not going to do that, right? I have to still fucking live my life and get through a workout. And so I'm probably going to cut the difference between, am I going way too soon, or am I fully rested? And that's somewhere about 3 minutes. for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it really matters. It's not that important to me. The most important thing is that whenever you get back to doing that extra, that second, that third set, that you're fully fucking into it and you're going to positive failure, because that's what's going to tell your body, hey man, we have to adapt.
Yeah. Okay. And then does weight matter? And what I mean by this is, I'll always look at this of like, okay, my body doesn't actually know if I've got 225 on there or 135 on there, right? It just knows how hard it's working. So like, as as I get older, I may not be as strong as I was in my early 20s, right? You know, does so there's going to hit that point where maybe I can't keep adding more weight, and maybe even it starts declining. But does that really matter to the muscle? I mean, if you're still putting that stimulus, still, going to that progressive overload, because again, the
Yeah, I
muscle
mean,
doesn't know what the number is.
yeah, I mean, let's face it, man. I'm not walking into the gym anytime in the last 10 years going, hey, I'm going to hit my PR on this one, buddy. Well, last 20 years, let's be honest. To say, hey man, this, I'm breaking PRs, or I'm breaking the amount of reps that I'm doing with this or that. It's not going to happen. So I'm competing with the guy that walked in last week. I'm competing with a guy who walked in yesterday. And, as long as I'm being honest with myself and I'm hitting positive failure, that's enough to stimulate for me. Now, when I go to, I talk about this too in the training system, but yeah, if you're in the gym, like, I'm doing a hammer strength chest press, a decline chest press, and I'm adding weights, I'm adding reps, I'm progressing, using progressive overload. I'm either beating my logbook with reps or adding weights. I'm continually moving up, and there comes to a point where I'm stale. I just can't get past it. Weights haven't moved in a while. I know I'm recovered. My recovery's balanced. I change movement. Okay, well, I'm going to walk around. I'm going to find a new movement, that I'm going to find a new press that I can use. I just did this. So I switched to an upper chest movement, to an incline press movement. And I started almost back at zero. I put 25-pound plates on, and I did a couple sets, adjusting the machine, finding the balance, all that. And, I went up to a couple plates, and for me, that's not a lot, for that, but that's a new movement. And so now then, I got really sore from that workout. And now I'm in that point where I'm going to go in and I'm going to either add weights or reps, and eventually I'll max out on that machine, then I'll change again. And so that's part of that, how to keep that stimulus coming, and how to keep that stimulation effective.
Yeah. Yeah. So switching up movements. And then there are times too where you switch up rep ranges, right?
I'm pretty consistent with those, man. I'm pretty
Okay.
consistent with those. Yeah, I'm trying to fail somewhere around 20s in the first set. And
Okay.
then depending on the movement, it's going to be, a big compound movement that drops sharply. If it's a single, like an isolation type move, or let's say a lat raise or something like that, a lateral raise, there's not going to be that huge drop off, but I will see a dropping of the rep range. But again, if I'm somewhere in the 12 to 20 range, I'm feeling good about that. If it's compound movement and I'm doing, my working set, my volume's up a little bit, on that last set, I might only get 6 reps, and that's fine too, as long as I'm going to positive failure. But I like to start it where I'm starting to target that 20 rep range on the first movement. And that could be different for you guys. If you feel like that's too much, then it's too much, but keep it above 12. That would be my recommendation. If you're going to do this positive failure thing, that first set should be a little on the high end, like 15, 18, because your second set, third set after that, you're going to drop. And, you don't want to go much lower than 8.
So then when you're training everything essentially twice a week, are you, like, let's just use chest as an example. Are you doing like, okay, I'm going to do upper, just incline movements, workout 1, and then, flat and decline movements, workout 2?
Yeah, it really depends. Yeah, there's a couple ways to break it up like that. If you're truly going to work a same body part twice a week, then I switch it up like that. So I'll do a pressing day and then maybe a fly dip day, or, there's a lot of ways to balance that. But that's kind of getting down into the nuance of the training system. But overall, getting back to how do you get jacked, it's that you're figuring out, when I stimulate the muscle, how hard do I stimulate it, and then when can I work it again? And so that's really comes down to that. If you're really throwing on the stimulation, you're getting sore and you're sore for 2-3 days, then you're not going to work it in 2 days. You're probably going to work it in 4 or 5 days again, maybe even 6. So you have to be fully recovered to work that muscle again. And so that's why if you're doing twice a week workouts, the volume and the stimulation has to be lower. So that's the balance. But overall, getting back to our original question, how do you get jacked? You're figuring out, how do I stimulate it? How hard do I stimulate it, and how often? And how does that balance with my recovery?
Yeah. And then, I know you spoke to this earlier of like, okay, well, the bicep example, okay, you're not gonna get huge biceps by doing preacher curls. You're gonna get by doing, heavy.
Well, preacher curls are different, right? Preacher curls are,
yeah.
The one that I always make fun of is, you see the guy with 12-inch arms, and he's standing up in the cable machine, and he's doing this little movement with there's a 5-pound plate or a 2.5-pound plate on this thing. And like, dude, what are you doing? You can't even curl a 25-pound dumbbell, and you're doing this movement that you saw some idiot on IG or somebody that's already jacked doing. And or you saw, Chris Bumstead did it as a finishing movement, or who knows, he's got to make up some kind of workout. That the arm didn't get that way from that movement, man. It got that way from doing a movement that you can actually add weight to. Nobody's going to do that crucifix curl and go in and one day is at 5 pounds, and then 2 years later he's doing the stack. You can't do that. You want to pick out a movement. If it's a preacher curl machine, if it's a standing curl, if it's dumbbell curls, or whatever it is, you're going to start, when you first start doing it, you're doing the barbell, right? Or you're doing 10 pounds on the barbell. And then in 2 years or 3 years, you're going to be doing a 45-pound plate. That's the kind of progressive overload that you want to shoot for. And so these little isolation movements, unless you're big already, forget them. They're useless. It comes into play. There's the use for them, but it's not a movement that you can progressively overload and add weights and add reps to get big. It's just not. Nobody's ever done it.
Yep. Okay. Well, and then, I think that's the hard part too. Like, okay, I was a kid growing up, and, I was obsessed with bodybuilding. I remember like, I'm 13, 14 years old, man. Like back then, there was no internet. So it was like, you had to wait till your Muscular Development magazine came in the mail every month. But like, okay, who were we trying to model after? These already massively jacked pro bodybuilders, so that can maybe, like your point, they built the foundation and they add some of these added movements, but I'm not going to get that same effect that maybe they would from some of those movements.
Yeah. I love, especially if I got a really good pump, man. So let's just say I went in and, I did an amazing back workout. And then I'm like, well, shoot, I still got energy, or, I love to train. And so if it was up to me, I would do 3 hour, if I could sustain it, I would do 3-hour workouts, because I like to train. And so you might catch me doing some, like a cable pullover or a standing cable pullover or some movement like that, where I'm just doing it for feeling, really. I'm doing it because I got a pump, I'm stretching out the muscle, I'm getting some more blood in there, and it feels good. Am I going to grow from that? No, man, nobody is. It's not going to happen. The one thing, but is that a movement that maybe you're not getting lat activation? You can't ever get your lat sore, whatever, you're trying to build the mind muscle connection with it. Okay. It's a tool. It's a tool that you can use for that, but that's not a movement that you're going to progressively overload and get jacked from. It's not. And, I was the same with you, man. I'm reading these muscle magazines. I'm seeing these guys doing this, and you see their workout. But back in those days, it was, when you saw Jim Quinn and Dave Smith doing a leg workout in muscular development or flex, they had every plate on the damn leg press, and they're standing on top of it, and these guys are repping it out. It wasn't like, oh, I see these guys doing a cable curl with a cable, and think that it's just, they were kind of depicting more of the actual workouts, the hardcore workouts, and then now switch it to today, you see Instagram, and fucking everybody's filming, they're doing these stupid ass isolation, crazy movements that they saw somebody else doing, and number one, if they're jacked, they didn't get jacked from that. Number two, most of them aren't. They're just fucking people that look like they walked in off the street and put on a spandex, and they're doing these fucking workouts with these isolation movements, thinking that, and people copy them. Oh yeah, that's how you work. It's useless, man. You're wasting your time. It's a complete waste. If you think I'm wrong, go into the gym and see the biggest, baddest, strongest dudes and girls and look what they're doing. They're not lifting light weights. They're not doing these stupid isolation exercises. And if they are, they didn't get there from doing them. But mostly those people are lifting heavy ass weights that they've spent years progressively overloading on and building up to where they can do these enormous weights for a lot of reps. That's how they got big muscles.
Yeah, dude, I'll say, the last couple of years, ever since the lockdowns took place, I built a home gym, and I haven't been back to the gym since. And like I pretty much have everything I need, other than like two things that are missing in there that I don't have is like a leg extension and some element of a leg curl. So I'm, I can do, I don't know, walking lunges or what, but I never do,
Yeah.
right? I mean, pretty much for 2 years straight, dude, all I've been doing for like legs, dude, is I'll do like 16 sets of just squats. Like that's my leg workout.
Yeah.
And my legs are fucking just, is big, muscular, jacked as they've, I don't want to say ever been, but have they been in a lot of years. And I'm not one that is just saying, oh, you got to squat for bigger legs.
Right.
But that shows that point of like, how much time did I waste doing leg extent? Like, even like my cuts are deeper, like all the shit I thought leg extensions were doing. I don't know what they were doing, because I haven't done them in a long time and my legs look a hell of a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, it's, and this is part of what I talk about in the training again, too, is like, people ask me, oh, what's a good movement for this? What's a good movement for that? I don't know, man. I haven't seen you work out. I don't know your body mechanics. I don't know any of that. So how do you figure it out? Well, you go to the gym, and I did this on my off weeks where I'm not doing, like a pressing movement for my legs. I'll do extensions and curls. And go in and spend a day doing extensions and curls. Do crazy, do 10 sets, do 15 sets, crazy reps, and then see what happens the next day. Are you sore? Yeah, I'm a little sore. Okay. All right. Put that, kind of notate where you're sore at, how kind of sore you're at. And then the next day you go in, do leg press, warm up, and get to the heaviest weight you can do and do reps of 20 with it, and do, 5, 6, 7, 8 sets of 20 with heavy ass weight that you can barely get 20 reps with, and then see where you're sore. Simple test. And you'll realize exactly what those little isolation movements are capable of and what they're not capable of. Are they great to warm up? Are they great finisher? Yes. Did anybody ever build big ass monster quads from extensions alone? No.
Yeah. So that's all the stimulus standpoint. And I don't know if there's other things that you want to add to that, but I think we probably hit that pretty hard.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
Just the overall picture. Yeah.
So then from there, the secondary part of that's recovery. That's kind of everything else. That's going to be, food, sleep, rest days, all of that. So let's kind of get in that secondary part.
Yeah, the obviously the most powerful tool there is going to be food, right? And the biggest challenge, as we know, is getting people to track food and kind of be cognizant of actually what their intake is. And so when you're starting to balance recovery, you're going to have to kind of assess yourself. How much body fat do I have? What foods can I eat? How much food can I eat? All those things. But overall, you're going to want to take in a high amount of protein. And, that starts with somewhere around 1 gram per pound of lean body mass and beyond. I'll typically 1.5 up to 2 grams per pound of body weight and of lean mass. And that's a lot of food. That's a lot of protein. And so just to give you an idea, I think it's about a year ago now, maybe 12 months, where, I did the just straight chicken and rice for, 6 months as an experiment. And, for me to eat that much protein in a day, it's 6 meals of a massive bowl of chicken. And day in and day out, that takes work, man. But then, I look back to when I was my biggest in bodybuilding too. I mean, I knew that I was going to eat 2 pounds of beef a day, period. I knew I was going to eat a dozen eggs, period. I knew I was going to have 3 protein shakes, period. Repeat for 10 years. And so part of that recovery portion is kind of adapting yourself and cycling your body up to be able to eat enough protein and eat enough carbohydrates and volume of food to balance that, whatever your stimulus is, with how you're recovering. And so most people will undereat. Most people eat the wrong stuff. Most people make up calories with fat, which really isn't doing a lot for your body in terms of muscle growth. And so, the first portion of determining what I need to eat and kind of dialing your diet is eating enough protein. And again, that starts somewhere about 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. Second consideration is carbohydrate. So I don't care who you are. I don't care what you think you know. But in order to grow big muscles and retain significant amount of muscle mass, you're going to have to refill and keep muscle glycogen on board. And to do that, you have to eat carbohydrates. So, that's just a simple fact. That's you can't get around it. So in order to eat enough carbohydrates without eating junk, I'm talking about carbohydrates that are readily available, usable for your body. For me, the best is white rice. You're still looking at, even if it's a lower carb day, just enough energy to get by and maintain. I'm looking at almost a rice cooker full of rice a day. If it's a day where I'm loading glycogen up, it's 2 rice cookers and a bunch of sugar to get there. And so that's not, that's me in my old manhood. I mean, when I was doing that, when I was really big, it's a lot of food, man, a lot. And to get up there, you just can't start one day and say, hey, I'm going to eat all this food in a day. You have to train yourself and you have to get your discipline down and kind of have your body cycle up to be able to eat enough food to actually support growth and continue growing. And so if you look at a guy, if you would have looked at me when I was 18 compared to, when I hit my biggest muscle kind of density and mass and strength when I was about 27, 28, the difference in food was probably about 3,000 calories a day. And, that was from protein and carbohydrates, which is a lot of food. And so if you look at the history, or you see somebody, or you're watching somebody who goes from, a decent amount of muscle mass up to a significant, like really put size on, you're gonna have to progressively overload your muscles with big movements. And then you progressively enable yourself to eat more and more whole foods like that to process and recover and support that adaptation needed by your body.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, as far as timing of carbohydrates, is there importance to that? Because it, like you mentioned with glycogen stores, at least from what I learned, 27 years ago in muscle physiology classes, and so utilizing muscle glycogen for fuel during anaerobic exercise. So okay, like you need to, and if you, once that's depleted, then you'll get into a catabolic state and start burning, and that's where kind of overtraining kicks in, right? So then, my thought process, and again, a lot of my education is from fucking 30 years ago, and a lot of this has changed, but is the importance of kind of pre and post meals with making sure you have enough carbohydrates in those 2 meals. Is there importance to that? Is that extremely important?
So again, we can dive into to the nuance of this, and I like to cycle carbohydrates to where I'm kind of depleting glycogen and able to stay lean and keep body fat down, and then I go 2 days where I'm replenishing it for a day, and then I kind of ride that wave out. But since we're talking about just getting big here, I'm going to assume that it's getting big without getting fat. And to do that, you're going to have to figure out how much carbohydrates you need to keep your glycogen stores close to being full, or as close as you can get without spilling over. Because when you spill over, then you're going to store stuff as body fat. And so, that's typically, that takes some tuning in to do. But I don't like to ever have somebody train flat, meaning you're out of muscle glycogen. You go into the gym, you're working out, you do stuff that normally you would have a pump doing, like your muscles would feel pumped, and you can't get a pump. Well, you're either severely dehydrated or you're out of glycogen. And I don't like to train like that. I don't recommend anybody train that way. unless we're trying to cut fat, and then it's only for a few days a week. You cycle down into that. So to kind of keep out of that, yeah, I always recommend that you eat before you work out, meaning 60 to 90 minutes pre or consuming protein and carbohydrate. And then somewhere afterwards, it doesn't have to be this magic window where you're eating with 30 minutes, but somewhere pretty close to post training, you're eating carbohydrates and protein again. And then depending on how much you ate, the rest of the day kind of, will determine on how many carbohydrates you need to replenish your glycogen stores, and then, kind of run onboard metabolism and energy for the rest of the day. But typically for somebody who's eating carbs every day, the biggest dose will be pre and post training.
Okay. Yep. And then what about during the workout? I mean, do you do any of like the kind of intra workout stuff? Like,
yeah, that's another trick to kind of up your recovery. When I was at my biggest and baddest, I was sip protein during the workout. Now they came out with products like EAAs, where it's just essential amino acids. It's a lot easier to down than a protein powder during your workout. And so I will always train with EAAs as intra workout. Again, I kind of cycle my carbohydrates now, but if I was training, maximally to put on muscle mass, then the intra nutrition, I would have a little bit of carbohydrates in there as well.
Yeah, because I think for a while there, or at least during a phase since I've known you, where you were, I don't know if you were doing a big photo shoot. I can't remember what it was, but you were, putting on some size. I think of that, like, weren't you doing like pomegranate juice or something?
Yeah, I always do pomegranate juice. But that's 15, 20 carbs. If I'm doing, if I'm leaner and I'm having to rely on carbohydrates more, then that'll be more carbs. So I'll add in like a maltodextrin or something with some carbohydrate in it, maybe some more orange juice or something with a little bit higher carbs. And I'll probably have 30, 40, 50 carbs during that I'll sip. And then I'll have amino acids with that, either essential amino acids or just straight protein powder.
Okay. And then what about, because you talked about EAAs, just, in the industry, a lot of, push towards branched chain amino acids. Any good use there?
Yeah, so branched chain amino acids are basically completely useless. They've been proven to be useless. Nobody ever got big drinking BCAAs, but essential amino acids, big difference. So essential amino acids are all the amino acids that your body needs. It doesn't have to synthesize any for protein synthesis. In BCAAs, there's 4 amino acids basically. I think it's the branched chains are 3 or 4. I don't remember. But it's not enough. It's not a complete array that you need. Or, cheapest option is just whey protein concentrate that has all your amino acids in it. It's going to be a little bit thicker, and it's not as easy to drink during a workout. But if you can afford EAAs, I recommend those. They taste great.
Specific one that you like?
I like the NutraBio formulation. I trust those guys. They're a very honest and accountable company, and they make a great product.
Okay. So then, all right. So then the next thing is sleep. This is a topic I always freaking hate, because this is where I always fall short. How important is sleep?
Man, I don't know that you can get really big or hold on to a significant amount of muscle without it. You can make up for it by taking drugs or anabolics or this and that, but it's always going to catch you, man. It's always going to catch you. So, I just look back again on the times that I was putting on the most amount of muscle, where I was holding on to the most amount of muscle. I was sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night, 6 to 7 hours a night, and then a nap after the workout. Sometimes 2 short naps, sometimes 3 naps. And so for me, that was kind of the key for me to recover and get ready for the next workout. That being said, now I don't typically nap during the days, but I'm sleeping longer. If I'm not, I go to bed at 9 o'clock and I'm typically up at 6. So, you do the math on that, but it's a lot more than it used to be, but I typically don't need a nap. And again, I'm not pushing it like I used to, but for gaining muscle like that, sleep is super important. So sleeping habit, building up, however it's going to do to get you to get a restful sleep during the night, and then if you can, a nap.
Okay. So, trying to target, that 8 hours of sleep.
I mean, it varies for people, man. Some people are great on 6 and can recover and don't have any issues. Some people, do better with longer, some don't. So it's really a personal thing. But if you wake up and you're rested and you can go train and you don't, I would have a hard time saying that 6 hours isn't enough. But I'm just thinking of the guys that I know that really put on big amounts of muscle, myself included. I would take a 20-minute nap right when I got home from the gym. Protein drink, carbs, slam it on the way home, 20-minute nap, wake up, eat, and then, have a restful sleep at night.
Yeah. I mean, because like I feel it, dude. Like I recently switched my leg workout to Saturdays and later in the evening on Saturdays, because when I was hitting them early in the morning before work day, dude, I would just get drained throughout the day. Right. Putting that, like that type of intensity of a workout. Like I just, I mean, I would be able to function and get through, but I didn't have the same mental energy throughout the day, so I can see how, when you're training hard, dude, like you need that, rest, man.
Yeah, I don't know that you can go through and do the type of workouts, especially that I was doing when I was really putting on muscle, where I was really maintaining a large amount of muscle. I don't think you can do it without it.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can. I mean, if I didn't have restful nights and then sleep, naps during the day, I don't think you can do it.
So what about other things like, alcohol, just like shit like that? Like how does that impact if somebody's wanting to optimize muscle growth?
Yeah, for me, that was negative. You can't go out and drink and then wake up the next day and train. At least even when I was in my 20s, man, I would feel it. My training would be compromised from it. And so again, if you're really trying to put on muscle, you're kind of looking to build a system for yourself. Essentially, you want to build a system where you go in and you do the right stimulation, and then you have the right recovery. And anything that takes away from that, you don't do. And so, if it's talking about, you're drinking. So if you go out and you're going to drink, well, your diet's going to be fucked up then, because you're not eating your 600, however many, for me, it's 350 grams of protein and 250 grams of carbs from rice. You're not going to do that and then go drink. You can't, you can't do it. So you're fucking up your diet. You're going to miss 2 or 3 meals. That's that, if not more. And then alcohol has a detrimental effect on your body. So you've essentially you've trashed that whole recovery cycle that you need to be able to keep that balance in your system down of stimulation, recovery, repeat, stimulation, recovery, repeat, to grow big muscle. And so, that's not part of the plan, man. And anything that you do that takes away from that balance and that cycle being repeated over and over and over every day for years on end, or however long it takes for you to get this type of muscle that you want, it's not something you want to do. It can't be in your system on a regular basis. The other thing that comes up is drugs. Well, what do anabolics do? Well, that's a long discussion too, but that aids in recovery. And so even, if somebody adds in anabolics or takes them away or whatever, you're going to have to rebalance that stimulation and recovery. So, another example, you switch from day shift to night shift. Okay, what implications is that going to have on your stimulation that you're going to have to balance for a while until you get back in your system of stimulation, recovery, balanced, repeat? And so, things like that, stress at work, or you get sick, you have diarrhea, you can't eat for a day. How can you get back to that cycle again and get back to baseline to your system of stimulation, recovery, repeat? And so anything that takes away from that, you have to balance. You have to evaluate, how do I balance that with the stimulation that I'm going to provide today, tomorrow, the next day? And how do I get my recovery back up to where it was in balance?
Yep. Yeah. And then are there any other, when it comes to maybe supplements, whatever, that you have found Yeah, it's funny because when I have conversations with you, like I end up just dumping out, 60, 70% of the pills that I just fucking bought that I find out, like, branched chain amino acids, as an example.
Yeah.
But are there any that, that are important and make a difference? Creatine monohydrate, or like an HMB, or like a ZMA, or, any other that give you that extra edge when it comes to, stimulus and recovery?
So just I mean, there's a couple, but the ones that really come to mind, universal for everybody, is creatine and probably a protein supplement. Why do I say protein supplement? Because not everybody can eat 350 grams or however many grams of protein a day from chicken or beef or whatever, day in, day out. It gets tiring. And so that's when a protein supplement helps with that. So those are the two things that I would definitely recommend for almost everybody: creatine for everyone, and a protein supplement if you can't eat enough whole food, which is very difficult to do. Other than that, man, I mean, we could dive into rabbit holes with supplements, but I would look at a magnesium so that you can rest a little bit more efficiently. But other than that, in terms of recovery, I'm going to stick to those two.
Yeah, I mean, because there's other things that we've talked
Now
about.
there's health and there's all that.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But in terms of just, muscle recovery and putting on muscle mass, I just can't stress it enough. When you kind of determine what your system is, or how you're going to provide stimulation, how you're going to recover, it's finding the system and then being able to repeat it day in and day out over years. Right. And so that's where meal prep comes in. Okay, how are you, for me, if I cook, essentially 16 pounds of chicken on Sunday, then I have it, it's chopped up, I cut it up, it's ready in the fridge so I can dish it out. And, whatever your system is, I used to buy 2 pounds of beef at the store a day on the way home and cook it. And that would be my lunch for the next, that would be my next day's beef. Whatever that system is, you have to get that and continue to do that. So however you end up doing that, that's really it, progressively overloading, doing movements that you can get stronger on over time. You can move serious weight with that hit intended muscle groups, and then recovering. And the recovering is, eventually getting your body to the point where you can actually eat enough food and protein to support that recovery, and then doing it over and over again for years.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's not an overnight process. But if you start thinking about it, well, shit, if you add, I don't know, 1 to 2 pounds of lean muscle mass a year, and you do that for 5-10 years, right? Like, it starts
Well,
to make a world of difference.
if you don't change body fat and you add 5 pounds of lean muscle on in a year, you look much different. If you add 10 pounds on, it's shocking. For me, from the day the first day that I competed when I was 18, to the time that the last time that I competed on stage, it was 55, it was 60 pounds of muscle. That's huge. I mean, that's a different person altogether. If you put on 5 to 7 pounds in a year and you're at the same body fat level, you can tell. It's astounding, and that's absolutely achievable.
Yeah, I think, like a hack of getting jacked, or at least looking jacked, jacked, is make sure to keep that body fat low.
Yep.
It's
the
funny,
leaner
like,
you are, the more muscular you look, man.
Yeah, like if I'm at the gym, or like out with my shirt off, where like people be like, "Oh, dude, like, what do you like, 195?" Like, nah, 175. But at 175, and you're 7-8% body fat, and I mean,
well, that was always the mind fuck, when I would diet down or whatever, and I'd be halfway through a diet and starting to really get lean. My t-shirts fit like they're fucking loose. It's almost like I'm wearing my dad's shirt or something, and I'm a little kid. But then you take the shirt off and you go, okay, all right, things are okay. We're doing okay here. But it's really there's a lot of aspects to this where it's a mind fuck, where it's really hard. And one of it is the consistency over time. There's no shortcut doing this shit, man. You're not going to walk into a gym one day as a 16-year-old kid and, deadlift 135 and 2 years later do 600 pounds. It doesn't happen. Even today, it doesn't happen. that takes years, and that takes, I don't know, 1,000 training sessions. It's a long process. So my best advice, if you really want to put on muscle and you want to have some longevity and do this and have a lifelong pursuit of it, is, enjoy the process and really enjoy the training, enjoy the every aspect of it, the prepping, the meal prepping, the system. You have to enjoy that system, man. If you don't, you're not going to last. You can do it for a while, but you won't last.
Well, and I would encourage everybody too, of like, give it time, because at least from my experience, you will learn to enjoy it. I used to be a guy that I couldn't make it through a day without, getting Taco Bell, or, when I was close to 300 pounds, and, but now it's like, man, like when we go on vacation or whatever, like number one thing I'm most excited about is to just get home, start meal prepping, and be back on my routine. Where in the beginning, like there was a time in my life where I would have never thought I'd ever enjoy this. And I thought that this was going to be the shittiest rest of my life forever, committing to this. But, eventually, at least for me, eventually got to the point where it clicked. And, I love my diet. I love, like you said, man, when we travel, and maybe in a position where I can't meal prep in the same way, it's always what I just can't wait to get home to fucking eat my eggs and avocado or prep my, whatever. And it sounds so lame, but you learn to start loving it. I'm guessing you're
well. Plus, I feel better. I just, my body responds to those foods better. They're simple, single ingredient foods, and they're foods that I've identified work in my body really well. And that's the best fuel for me, man. You can't, a Ferrari will run on 87 octane for a little while, but that's not the best, man. It's not, it doesn't. It always wants that higher octane. And that's how you train your body. You're gonna, when you get your system down and you repeat it after, day after day, year after year, you really get kind of a taste of what it feels like to be optimized and operating at a higher level than you were before, or physically. And then when you deviate from that, you notice it really fast, man. You notice it really fast. But
yep, 100%. Well, I know we're going long on time. Any last thoughts, words of advice?
Just a plug, man, again, for the my advanced, our system that we have, the advanced sports training. Break all this stuff down in video format, and it's literally like going to a 2-hour 2 to 3 hour event lecture, and I spill everything that I've learned over 35 years of training and help build some monsters. And I've noted, this is just everything that I have and learned into a format that you can watch over and over again, broken down into modules that you can, watch over, relearn. And, I'm really proud of that product. I think we did a really good job on it. And it breaks down everything that I have to say about training.
Yep. Yeah, that was fun creating it, dude. It was, Jim flew out here to Arizona. We trained, brought in the video crews and videoed you working out, but also did in my kitchen meal prepping. And
that's right.
So it's all in there, man. All aspects of it, plus all the journals and all that stuff. So yep, awesome stuff. And you guys are interested now, I'll make sure to have a link below if you just scroll below wherever you're watching or listening in that. So as always, Jim, we truly appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to be here, dude. This has been awesome.
Yeah, brother. Man. I was talking to you. Good talking to you, bro.
Yeah, 100%. Those watching and listening, as always, we truly appreciate you guys being here. Truly appreciate your support. Keep crushing, keep kicking ass, and we'll see you next time. Peace.